Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Tim Mikhelashvili, CEO and co-founder of Amedea Pharma, an agency that's focused on bridging the gap between performance analytics and organizational change. We're founded on a management model that integrates sports and data science into daily operations of all business to master medical performance, impact, and strategy. Today, I'm going to be your host and moderator for a real world practical webinar that's going to teach all of you a system that you can apply today to be successful in the fourth quarter and also to have the best ever 2026 year ahead. So we're excited, and I'm here joined by my panelists who bring a very diverse set of experience and perspectives and leadership across medical affairs, medical information, manufacturing leadership, in commercial teams, and R&D, as well as management consulting and enterprise software implementation. Jeff New, Graham Long, and Alex Pasek as well, who will be joining us. So I want to hand over the stage to you, Jeff. Maybe you can get us started and tell us what your goals are for this webinar and also address our audience who will be joining.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for the opportunity. I've spent 25 years in medical affairs, and this is a topic that I'm very interested in. I'm looking forward to the discussion today to get some clarity around how we can more definitely measure performance. I think a lot of times we are doing things in medical affairs that we believe lead to improved outcomes, but it's sometimes difficult to show that. So looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you. Graham.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for inviting me to the webinar. Just briefly for those on the call, I'm trained as a clinical biochemist. I've worked in biopharma, academic cancer research in the last 20 years, commercializing solutions for life sciences, primarily drug discovery for companies all around the world. I'm really interested in looking at solutions, how one can build successful, motivated, engaged teams by altering behaviors. And I think data, transparency, accountability, and incentives all point in that direction, is to provide the basis for an enhanced, engaged team.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be talking about turning accountability into motivation during this webinar. So Alex Pasek is having some technical issues joining us today. We'll have to excuse him and continue. So here is the outline for our webinar today. And I want to invite all of you who are joining to post your comments and questions as I go through the presentation and as we hear from our panelists. So we're going to challenge our conventional norms in how we define medical excellence first, review some of the latest research on how we measure and communicate quality and impact, and then we're going to hear from all of you in a live survey that's going to kick off today. It's going to last for a week, and I'm going to ask the panelists to lead and moderate some of those questions and get their perspectives on what's being done currently. Then share two real-world case studies before we're going to jump into a system that we're going to build together to unlock some champions in medical affairs. But as your questions come up, as I mentioned, we're going to address them afterwards, but feel free to share them as they do come up for you. So I want to start with a personal story and tell you why I made the critical decision of becoming a medical science liaison, a medical MSL, about 21 years ago. So at the time, I was a full-time PharmD fellow working in a large pharma company for a very highly respected leader in medical education, with whom together we were building a $15 million budget, as we were very excited about the prospect of a first-in-class launch of rimonabant, an endocannabinoid receptor antagonist for obesity management and smoking cessation. During that year, I got to know a lot of the MSLs, and who were given a specific budget to manage their territory and to support medical education in their geography. And I remember how passionately they defended their educational programs on team calls that I also participated in. And it was that independent decision-making, their scientific curiosity, and their role as CEOs of their territory that really motivated me to pursue that path in my career. Now, MSLs are not given a budget today. However, the central question of this webinar today is, what if we were to distribute our accountability better, more differently on our teams? How would that change their motivation, on our teams? Now, throughout my career, I've seen very early on how medical teams demonstrate their medical excellence through investigator-initiated studies that change the standards of care and cholesterol treatment, or how we define risk. Later on in my career, I also had the opportunity to lead medical teams to co-author head-to-head publications in a startup company against a large market leader that directly grew the company's business impact. However, regardless, there is no medical excellence that you can predict without a continuous quality improvement system. And so I know that those of you who are joining this webinar are looking at taking best practices back to your organizations. And I also know that work does not seem to stop right now in medical affairs and life sciences. So we better make it count. In order to do that, we need to redefine how we understand the concept of work and performance. We're all excited about our products being accepted to the national formularies, our treatment guidelines. In the same way, our physicians and customers tell us that their patients hit their targets. Or we're excited when our physician tells us at our annual physical that our health is in great shape. Same way that we're excited when we run our first marathon or 10K, right? Or beat our personal records. However, we're not as motivated to check on our performance every day, right? Or to check our balance books online, okay? And so what if we were to change our habits? What would that impact on our results? Our results may change as well, right? And so what we need to do is to make something that is usually not seen as motivational, such as performance or even quality improvement, and make it a daily conversation. Right. So at Amedea Pharma, we refer to this continuous quality improvement system as deep metrics, which consists of these 3 steps. Number 1, setting clear benchmarks. Number 2, capturing quality data. And number 3, raising new standards in order to justify the resources and the investments that we really need, that are necessary to transform those business and patient outcomes. And we're going to go into each one of these in more detail as we build this system together on this webinar. Now, as a company that is focused on bringing sports and data science into daily operations, you can imagine how excited I was when I saw this article in Forbes in May from Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, who clearly states that sports is no longer a metaphor. Modern CEOs need to operate like elite athletes, like Olympic teams, and think about what can be done better every day. So the goals that we set, the metrics that we have directly impact our behaviors and our culture, which in turn determines whether or not we're likely to meet those goals and expectations. However, most organizations separate the two. Okay, we have lots of ways to measure customer insights. Okay, from some teams. However, when you have two different functions that have a shared set of customers, but only one receives recognition, then we shouldn't be surprised why they may not be working together effectively. Okay, and so instead of measuring them separately, if we were to combine both the technical performance with customers and those internal daily workflows, that behaviors and incentives, we would then not just measure, but potentially master performance. Okay, and so over the 20 years that I've been in the industry, I've seen how medical leaders and team members argued persistently to no end about how to quantify and measure our impact in medical affairs. And so we confirmed some of these blind spots that I just spoke about in the latest, largest medical affairs metrics benchmarking report of 51 pharma companies, which showed that 70% of them do not analyze how their activities lead to outcomes. And as a result, we make a lot of decisions based on incomplete, inconsistent data. And we do not forecast the actual resources that we need in order to drive those goals and expectations that we have, which is not surprising to see. And so the reality today in this very difficult, challenging healthcare ecosystem is that we need to be more accountable, right? And so this makes me think of another recent, very volatile and uncertain environment that we all lived through, which was COVID. And that's when I came across this quote from Edwin Friedman, who defines a leader as someone who's able to describe reality accurately without laying blame, which means that accountability should not assume blame in any situation, no matter how challenging it may be. And as we all are familiar with the great biostatistician William Edwards Deming, who said that if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it, right? Which takes accountability. However, not many of us also know that it was William Deming himself who also said that those key critical factors that determine success of an organization are often ones that leaders do not see. Okay. Now, all of you in medical affairs hope that the MSLs and your teams are motivated, are self-driven, right? Like Henry David Thoreau, who said that the best government is the one that's least governed. However, the key here is to challenge ourselves and to measure some of these hidden motivational factors as well, the internal factors that drive behaviors and performance. Okay, to create the kinds of metrics, KPIs, and contests that will drive your teams to be motivated. Then step aside and then watch, observe, and analyze, how they do. Right. So why is this so important today in an environment in which our accountability has never been greater for the business, even in medical affairs, and the margins have never been smaller? So whether or not you like metrics today, right? There is an executive as we speak who's using some form of data analytics that may or may not be relevant to medical affairs or to your function in order to differentiate the high versus the lower performers. And so what we're going to talk about later on in this webinar is an alternative to that, a system that you can own and build in order to provide a more objective, more scientific and rigorous process and forecasting as well. So what does the current research tell us now? Well, we are not measuring what we should be measuring, and we recognize that. This is data from the 2023 survey from Viva Systems that shows that we're measuring activities, but we should be measuring how we're directly influencing clinical practice, how we impact scientific beliefs and insights. Now, in this latest 2025 survey of 1,023 medical affairs professionals across 63 countries, we see that the largest gap in what we currently measure and what we should be measuring is in the quality of the engagement of our medical interactions. We want to know about the quality of based on the feedback from KOLs, quality of our actionable insights as well. That's where the gaps between the orange and the green bars are the greatest, as you can see here. When we survey our customers, the HCP community, they also recognize these gaps as well, right? They tell us that our quality of our interactions varies substantially from one company to the next. And also, very importantly, they see that we are not very coordinated, okay? 44% cite this lack of internal coordination, which may mean in the real world that they may see a sales rep from our company as well as a medical affairs representative who may not even know that the other also visited that physician, right? That's how that plays out in the real world. So now I want to invite all of you to share with us what you're currently doing. What are some of your current approaches? And in this survey, all right, so I'm going to pull up this QR code. I want to invite all of you to go to slido.com, scan this QR code, and take this short 1 minute, 7-question poll. All right, so I'm going to pull up the questions and ask our panelists now to weigh in as well. All right, so here's our survey. Let's start from the first question. I'm getting some. Okay, what is your current role? So, yeah, first start with just identifying where your focus currently. Are you an MSL, an executive? Are you watching this from and with a sales perspective, marketing, R&D? So we're going to wait for these votes, but I want to get some feedback and some responses here from Jeff. Jeff, maybe you can comment on how do you see medical affairs team ensuring that they grow their impact over time currently? What are you seeing? Is it through activities via CRM? Is it through insights?
Well, I think what we're most interested in, like you said, are the outcomes. I think activities certainly lead to outcomes, but what we really want to be engaging in are changing beliefs. We can sort of get at that through insights, understanding what our customers believe, and then trying to, target education to meet whatever gaps may be there, and ultimately influence beliefs, and that will lead to outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that the current standard of care is to just measure something that has already occurred, like an interaction, versus to follow through over time, since sometimes some of these outcomes take a long time, right? In medical.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah, I
think
think you're right. I mean, the only things that we can measure with certainty are things that have happened in the past.
right? Yeah,
So that's definitely the case, and I do think we are still very activities focused at most companies because that's the easiest thing to measure.
yeah. All right, great. So you should have the link. Please keep voting. Anything to add there, Graham, on continuous quality? How do you ensure continuous quality improvement? It's something that you've been able to do as a leader of manufacturing and R&D teams. So maybe provide us with that perspective.
I think it's really about understanding one's own impact within the organization and the team's impact, and then looking how cross-functionally that team has an impact on the other team, right? And breaking down those barriers of communication so everyone is aware of the potential impact you can have on the other team's performance. I'll use the analogy in sports here, Tim. I've been a lifelong athlete, cycling and rowing quite a long time ago. One person in the boat does something wrong, the whole thing flops over to one side. Being self-aware and accountable for your own actions and the impact, not just within your team, but on the organization as well, I think really shines a light on developing, how to develop a higher performing team.
Yeah, thanks. In fact, I should have introduced you as not only a scientist and an expert in R&D, but also as an athlete. Thanks for that reminder. Yeah, absolutely, Graham. So let's take maybe another peek here as the votes are coming in. So medical insights, customer feedback here. Let's go on to the next question. What data do you use to justify resources necessary to grow? These two questions are related. So we're going to make sure that the results from this survey have quality and integrity. And I'm going to share all the results with everyone who's attended. And we're going to capture as much data as we can. Feel free to share this link, by the way, with your teams, your colleagues, and in your company and outside as well. Jeff, I'm coming back to you. Maybe anything that you'd add here in terms of how do you justify the resource? How do you build a business case today in this very tough environment for resources that you need? What are some?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the need. It can vary a little bit, but not everything is measurable. So sometimes we have to just take our best shot if we see something that we think will address a need and build a case for it by getting consensus. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
Right, it's tough. It's complex, right? And
I mean, I think in my role, we often look for ways to streamline our activities to be more efficient in how we do it, and hopefully improve, performance as well. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. So I have some follow-up questions, but I'll save them towards the end or for later, Jeff. So other questions that may, and please feel free to interrupt me, by the way, Jeff, Graham, Alex, I know Alex is on as well. How many total platforms do you interact with currently to communicate performance, talent, and strategy? And see, we're getting already one response here. We have actually 3 responses. Yes. So showing that there are four different platforms that leaders have to juggle in order to communicate performance, talent, and strategy. So I think that reiterates how complex this is. I've even recently read data from Salesforce that says that a typical pharma company has 78 different platforms that they manage across all the different types of data that they collect, performance, talent, strategy, and among others. then the next question here in the survey is, how long does it take you for your leaders to align and decide your goals? 1 month. So, so right now we're in October, right? Or, let's say we can think about the next year's goals, right? A lot of people are thinking about them now, but, in January, what my experience has been, usually it's not really March until when you actually start, when you know what the goals are. And 1 month at least has passed by then, right? Some people are voting now; they're showing 2 weeks. So
I
how
think this
can we make
depends a
this
little
faster?
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this one depends a little bit on where you are in your life cycle.
Okay.
In a particular disease state. I think, if you have a new investigational compound, it's going to take some time, to really develop strategic imperatives for, the next year. But if you put that work in, once you do it, the following year you're going to have minor tweaks. It's not going to be so much
Yep.
change. So it depends a little bit on where you are.
Okay, so you need some more work upstream in order to save you a lot of other work, and a lot more efficiency downstream, right? Yeah. Okay. Next question is, following along that cycle. So you've now determined the goals. Now, how long does it take you after you have those goals to align now on implementation? What's the average from time interval from team alignment on strategy to actual implementation? Right, 1 week, 2 weeks. So that's great. So we have. I'd be very curious to see how large these companies are. I would venture to guess they may be smaller companies, right? I'm really glad to see this, these data, right? But
From
what do you see?
alignment to implementation in 1 week, that'd be an interesting place to work.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes, that's one of the reasons why I I think switched from being an employee to being a founder and right, and entrepreneur, to kind of move things along a little bit faster, right? Even though I have worked in large companies as well as small and startups, so I've seen different approaches. Okay, so let's look at the next one here. How often do your teams update their goals per year? So this used to be once, even twice. Now, teams are doing this more often, it looks like, quarterly. How about on your team now, Jeff? Is it quarterly? Is that?
I think we review them quarterly. I'm not sure they change that much. But we do check in to make sure, are we still on the right path? Are these things still important? Particularly when you look at field medical and you consider like kicks and kits, we'll look at things. Are these still the right questions to ask?
So kits and kicks, for those of people who may not be familiar with medical affairs, key intelligence topics, key intelligence questions, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Great. So, by the way, feel free to share your comments, questions regarding this survey as well, those of you who are joining. All right. So we're going to share more results later. Let's get now more detailed about what's being done that's successful. All right. So let's share some success stories, as I mentioned. All right. So there are two that I'm going to focus on. One is from a large pharma company where I interviewed their global vice president of medical affairs, who told me about this new initiative, agile methodology that they implemented, where two teams were brought together that wouldn't otherwise intersect in terms of strategy very closely or on a daily basis. Sales and medical. They brought two KPIs each that were aligned with compliance, such that medical did not have any accountability for the sales targets. However, they measured each other's performance throughout the year. And the criteria they used was very unique and interesting, and of particular interest to us at Amedea Pharma. And that was they weighed performance at 50% and behavior at 50%, which is the most pure formula for sportsmanship, one that we have espoused at Amedea Pharma since 2019. And so I was particularly happy to hear how this particular large company was able to implement this independently in the last year. They started this program in Germany. They demonstrated significant improvement in performance and teamwork, and it was actually adopted widely across the United States. Now, this allowed the middle managers to now become subject matter experts. And coaches and mentors as well. Now, here's a second case study in which we participated at Amedea Pharma. This was a first-in-class type 1 diabetes launch of a startup company called Prevention Bio that was overwhelmed with a lot of inquiries from all over the world, from physicians, from customers, from patients as well, that they weren't able to manage or handle with the staff that they had. And so what we did was we created one central master performance database dashboard for them, distributed the accountability between medical information function and the field medical science liaisons who actually work with physicians and with the HCP community more directly and live in the field as well in their respective territories. They now started to help out with writing medical information responses to these questions, which were critical because they may have prevented hospitalizations, drug interactions, increased treatment efficacy. So they had direct healthcare impact. And so we now added more KPIs as well. They only had 2 KPIs when we came in. And so here are some of the results where we now started to track time of fulfillment, which is so critical, which can be the difference between life and death for some of these patients. So the time to fulfillment decreased from 4.3 days down to 2.2 days, which we started to measure more intentionally. We increased the rate of fulfillment of these medical inquiries as well, up to 100%. And also the volume of the letters increased fourfold. 400, so fourfold increase in productivity, 141% increase in efficiency as well. And so these experiences is what led us at Amedea Pharma to develop a centralized platform that allows leaders to manage their performance, their personal development talent, as well as strategy in one database without having to leave from that platform. And ultimately, it addresses this one underlying need that all of us share in medical affairs or in pharma or in the industry, which is how to translate our daily contributions into impact. All right, so what's different and what's needed today is that instead of measuring a lot of very valuable disparate outcomes, maybe social listening, how many people attended our digital opinion leader educational programs, and all these great, metrics by themselves individually, instead of that approach, we need to have integrated metrics in order to master performance, meaning we need to coordinate the relationship between these variables, all right, to describe that reality, right? How do all of them interact and how do they impact outcomes? What is their relationship? And so there's a lot of excitement about new ways to measure performance and strategy, of course, right? However, you need those dashboards, right? The dashboards that we've been used to using for decades, which tell us the instant progress that we're making on our teams. Now there's a movement towards retrieval augmented generative AI, LLMs as well, which are particularly relevant for medical affairs teams because they allow us to retain the context of the training set that we can control in order to have valuable outputs of data. All right, because in medical affairs, the information that we share guides decision making that is critical for patients, right? And so there's more explainability. It's a human in the loop type of model that allows to see what the evidence is. Now, of course, there's a lot of excitement now towards agentic AI as well, right? And so what agentic AI does is really helps us with spending less time on doing a lot of administrative tasks. However, it doesn't have a lot of governance, right? So there's a higher governance risk and low explainability, right? It varies substantially in terms of the KPI quality and decision quality, right? And very importantly, it avoids the impact of internal operations, those unseen behaviors that drive performance as well, right? So it gives us the next best action. But if we ask the same kind of questions, it may give us different outputs in different times, right? And it may or may not be based on very strong evidence. Now, so where Ancora, this platform that we have built, fits in is really in between RAG and agentic AI, because what it does is it gives you, as a leader of your medical team, the control. You are in charge. However, you're able to create benchmarking and control for bias, meaning it gives you a live view of the KPI quality. What is the quality of the KPIs that you're using at any given time? And also it gives you the ability to explain your decisions, okay, to build a stronger business case for why you may need to change your activities or your focus. So, but ultimately, the question here is not which one do you use, but it's when do you use all of these and how do you combine them, right? That's probably the better question to use, because they can complement each other as well. And so the relevance of KPIs is different at various stages of the life cycle or your company. So in that case study example that I provided earlier, where Amedea was brought in to help with field force effectiveness, and where we distribute accountability between two different functions, this actually ended up being very instrumental in ensuring that this startup was acquired by a larger company, Sanofi, okay, for which we received lots of recognition. So during, whether it's at a scientific conference or even in mergers and acquisitions, it's important to be very organized, to analyze performance in detail. Now, let's now build a continuous quality improvement system together, as promised on this webinar. All right. So before we do, the first steps are really to simplify everything that we are tracking currently by dividing it into activities or outcomes. Okay. Define and rank what those bottom line outcomes are for your organization, which may include company publications, maybe press releases or quarterly reports that you post on your website. Extract only the compliant medical information from all of that data, right? But when you set goals that are high, like that impact the entire organization, now you're able to provide your medical teams with the views that executives have, because ultimately the CEO and the executives, they want to know how all their different functions work together. What is their network mapping? To what extent is each making? Making the contribution to their corporate goals versus to their own goals? How are they working together, right? In this kind of simplified diagram here, right? You want to be able to understand how large the team is as well, and what's the relative impact they're making. And so when you use Ancora, you're going to create the settings. You're going to configure teams, the functions that you have. apply data science principles in order to study those relationships between activities and outcomes with the certainty factor that you're going to weigh, or objectives, the outcomes. And Jeff alluded to the outcomes earlier, right? Some outcomes may have higher value. In this case, optimal treatment for patients, right? Or European real-world evidence generation is weighed higher than, let's say, others at this given time, right? And so now that you've set up your expectations, your settings, right, your goals, whether or not they're global or they're local, now you're ready to list all those activities that you want to track internally, externally, right, by setting clear benchmarks. You have various different functions and their activities, corresponding activities, and weight. This weight is also ranked and quantified, right? So depending on what you want to stimulate more, right? If you want more of your teams to have formal group presentations with physicians, then you're going to weigh that higher, right? At 4 points, for example. And also you can list the KPIs that include that particular activity as well. So you've set your benchmarks. Now it's time to capture quality data, right? You have to capture and link all the outcomes to prior activities. All right. So let's take a look here at this one particular scenario. This is a new launch for a CNS neurodegenerative company, which is represented by various different functions, which has 3 field medical science liaisons, for example. And they ultimately drive towards this goal of treating more patients to target. So one MSL has a meeting with a KOL, a physician, who happens to be a chair of a task force for the guidelines. Another one also meets with a primary investigator who's a PNT member. And over the course of 6 months, all of these activities ultimately contribute to a new product addition to the PBM formulary, which the company now announces and publishes on their website. So the journey to the outcomes could be quite long, but you want to be able to see who contributes and to what extent. Now, so when you capture your activities, the platform here, Ancora, takes a more of a workflow type of approach, which is very configurable, but it doesn't have any drop downs, but it instead allows you to look over your list of activities that you're expected to complete and then just check off what you've done that day. You receive a reminder. And so it's very important in order to have integrity and quality that the sooner you capture your work, right, and the simpler the process, the higher that quality is, right, in order to reduce recall bias, which is very real. So here are different types of notifications that you can configure to make sure that that integrity is played out in the real world. And now, how do you capture outcomes? All right. So this is where the sports integration into the daily fabric of business comes into play, where if you merely capture an outcome alone by itself, the platform gives you an error, as you see here, denoted by the red box at the top right. Right? If the system forces you to be more intentional, like a sports athlete who runs a marathon, has a personal record, but they have to analyze their training conditions, their start time, their splits, in order to replicate those personal records in a predictable manner, right? Or have that predictable medical excellence, as I referred to it in the beginning. And so this platform now allows you to have a different view, right? To see which types of team members contributed to this outcome, to what extent. And it gives you a scoring algorithm that you essentially are in control over, right? In the settings that I showed earlier, right? So, so here you see 5 different team members who ultimately contributed with impact to this particular goal, all right? Now, when we talk about quality data, it doesn't only come from colleagues. It should also be coming from our KOLs. This is what the data showed earlier, right? From the 2025 study of over 1,000 MSLs. And so you can collect specific data, specific data that's tied to a given interaction. Or let's say you have an insight campaign that you've ran to support a launch of a product. Okay, and you want to understand what the safety or the mechanism of action type of insights are, right? There are 4-question surveys. They take 1 minute to complete, but over the course of time, you're able to now generate a lot of evidence through this medical interaction outcome survey. General feedback, maybe on a quarterly basis, is also very important to capture the performance from the judges that you have. And your best judges are your colleagues and your customers, whom you directly impact all the time, every day on a daily basis, right? And so you can configure these surveys. They're short surveys, once again, but you're able to now quantify the performance as well as the behavior across the customer and employee experience. So now that you've gone through these 2 steps of this deep metrics continuous quality improvement cycle, now you're ready to raise new standards, right? So you need to recognize the progress of your teams, high performance, link the data to incentives, to management, to strategy. You can see the impact that they're delivering, not just the counts of activities, but the impact. This is weighed by the impact that you have set, right, across different functions on a team level, on an individual level. You can see how well they're progressing over time, individually. Okay. Here are KPI recommendations. So you can now also see the live grading of KPIs in order to understand what is the likelihood of one activity, of an educational grant or a study publication to drive the bottom line outcomes. And then what is the strength of that evidence, right? This will allow you to spend more time doing higher impact type of work. And based on the general surveys that you can also configure and create, you can now also understand the different segments of customers and colleagues and how they're rating your performance and behaviors as well, right, in this dashboard. And very importantly, this is one particular view that a lot of us have been, I think, waiting for in medical affairs to demonstrate how to directly impact the clinical outcomes, right? So once you generate a lot of that data from the specific surveys of medical interaction outcomes, you're now able to see how, and follow through on how that information that you're using to educate the HCP community is ultimately impacting patients. All right. Notification. So I talked a little bit about the talent, right? Collaboration. To what degree are your team members helping each other? How are they failing? Why are they failing? You're creating a safe environment in which people learn from their failures. And also they can use a lot of this data through simple notifications, weekly notifications, to export it to a HR system that you may be using in your enterprise. But that now becomes much more predictive, much more objectivity to it, because you've been measuring it prospectively. So finally, you're now ready to modify your strategy, your objectives, right, and your budgets as well, right? So this is a team view of a dashboard of the relative contribution. It's a composite and KPI that allows you to see, based on the activities, outcomes, and their relationships that the platform calculates based on your priorities that you've set. You can see which team, which function is now driving the biggest impact. So in this case, for example, field medical has only 3 MSLs, right? It's lower on in this dashboard, in this table. So what that may lead you to do as a leader is to either hire more MSLs or maybe look at the KPI recommendations dashboard to see which are some of the high strength and higher quality KPIs that you can now introduce for this function in order to make sure that they're now able to drive those outcomes and maybe move up in this table next quarter. Decision making. So your company has now made an announcement of a European real-world evidence, a European business development announcement, a licensing deal. Okay, so now you need to generate new real-world data in Europe, in those local markets, in order to design those clinical studies appropriately with the endpoints that may increase the likelihood of approval. Right, so the platform allows you to track the decisions you make, and also to explain why you're making them. Okay, and provide necessary actions in order to that are forward-looking in order to continue to improve, right, or meet that goal. And you can export these decisions and keep yourself accountable in one same platform, essentially. So ultimately, what we're doing here with this type of platform and view is we're connecting the purpose of why we need to capture our performance every day, right? Go to the gym every day before we're getting injured, right? And not wait, right, until there's a problem, to progress and ultimately to the reward, right, in one same central system. So I've certainly learned from successful companies that I've been a part of that used a very unique approach to analyzing performance. All right, and so this one company it became the largest GI company in the world because they were able to convert their impact and quantify it and communicate it frequently. So if you're able to do that, you're able to now determine how well and why people work, right? By setting clear benchmarks. Now, I've also learned from failures as well. Companies that had best-in-class product, however, they had lots of blind spots and didn't account for their own internal collaboration and workflows. And so if you're able to distribute that accountability equally and differently across colleagues and customers, you're now able to capture quality data. And then finally, if you're able to have views that are in one central location that allow you to see how everyone contributes through their daily work, how they collaborate, you can make decisions faster, more often, and more effectively as well, in order to raise new standards. And so this is how all of those aspirational values that we all share of productivity, performance, and collaboration can actually come to real life and not stay as mere aspirations alone, right? So for the fourth quarter, those of you who are team leaders who are watching this webinar, okay, an AI algorithm that you may be implementing is useless if it doesn't have data that has quality and that's clean. Okay, this comes from Faisal Khan, Novo Nordisk Corporate Vice President of AI and Analytics, who talked about how many companies are slowed down by maybe sometimes implementing an AI algorithm without really understanding what the data is or if it's clean, right? So, start today by building a system that you can supervise and you can explain. Okay, the journey to the outcomes is a marathon, right? It's very long, but celebrate your wins, the small wins along that journey by capturing quality data, right? And also, the medical affairs teams are not the only ones that contribute to these outcomes. Okay, it's a team effort, but when you trace those outcomes back to your teams, you're able to secure the resources that you need and when you need them. This environment is very challenging today. In fact, it's very hostile. However, when you have a system that anchors itself on evidence and the quality of evidence, you're going to be now much more ready to anticipate future challenges ahead. Okay. Now, for the team members out there, remember that you fail not because you aim too high and miss, but because you aim too low and hit the target. Okay, so be open to capturing feedback on your quality from the customers and colleagues that you impact, which you have already shared in the global survey that I mentioned from 2025. Okay. I had the honor of interviewing Michael Rubin on the All Out Coach podcast, who reported to Reed Hastings and Netflix, who shared with me a story that at Netflix, they allowed executives such as Michael and others to make a $1 million mistake. And this is a quality of a learning and a modern organization. And so if you're a team member currently, embrace failure, even in a difficult environment. Fail fast, but learn from those failures. Forgive yourself and others, right? Learn on what caused that failure to prevent that same mistake, and then keep failing at something new, right? But learning from it. And ultimately, make your performance a daily conversation in order to treat performance as athletes do, right? Who share their diaries or their previous records of their meets with their competitors and their teammates. All right. And let's write a new chapter in medical excellence together. Those are some of my messages for team leaders and members. What questions do you have? Share them with me via comments. Jeff and Graham and Alex is on audio because of technical issues, I believe. How do we approach the new year and the new quarter with optimism, given the resources constraints that we have, and maybe some CRMs that do not often allow us to configure goal making and strategy? What are some of your suggestions, having listened to me here and present this system that we've talked about previously on monthly webinars as well here? What are some first steps that we need to make, and with the urgency, actionability today?
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, Tim. I think having a more holistic view of all the different that we're trying to do to move our businesses forward is helpful in any way that we can do it. But I would encourage folks to give you a call and see how you might be able to speed that along.
Yeah. Thank you. And by the way, yes, you just reminded me, get in touch with us. This is my email, timmick@amedeapharma.com. You're going to be hearing a lot about Ancora, a decision assistant. And so let's build a continuous quality improvement system and bring some excitement and meaning to decision making, which we need so dearly today in our environment. Graham, as an athlete, scientist, what are some first steps to implement a different approach to analyzing performance?
I think it really all comes down to understanding the hidden patterns in activities, behaviors, and outcomes. To do that, I think today, with the aid of these machine learning and AI models, we're positioned more than ever to be able to see those patterns as individuals, as teams, and then as cross-functional teams as a whole organization. Oftentimes, we're surprised by what those patterns show us. But as an athlete, I've got data going back to the 90s in terms of performance. I can see when I peaked and when I failed and was terrible. But then I can also see what was I doing before that. And it's not just the actual exercise of doing a training activity. It's also attitude, behaviors, sleep, eating. It's everything all together. And as an individual, it's really difficult to see those patterns. So having this type of system really can uncover those hidden patterns that leads to positive outcomes and success as an organization, as a team, and as an individual.
Great. Well, any other final comments from anyone? Or no? Okay, so let's wrap it up there. I want to wish everyone a great, successful fourth quarter ahead in 2026. See you soon. Bye.